Hello, and welcome to the Marshal Data Inspectors demo. For this demo, I will be inspecting the data module included in the Marshal demo app. I will expand out the data module and first take a look at the FD-mem table that is included. It receives an Object Plus inspector by default, and it receives an additional inspector called Dataset Grid. Dataset Grid is an FNC grid that is attached at runtime, allowing you to browse the data and optionally right-click and save it to CSV. And then I will export the data and I can analyze it later in whatever I care to. Dataset Grid is available on any T dataset descendant, so an FD query also receives Dataset Grid. Dataset Grid has a button to open the dataset if it's not already open. I find Dataset Grid very helpful when I'm troubleshooting indexes. Comparing these two, which are the same query, only indexed differently, I can right away see that the month here is sorted descending versus the other query, which is ascending. Now let's take a look at the TFT connection. TFT connection again gets an Object Plus inspector. It gets an additional second tab called Query Tool, which can execute SQL against the database in the FD connection. So it could be a simple select, or one that is more appropriate to look at is a user-defined function in SQLite. Here I have a user-defined function which is called xmy, and all it does is multiply two numbers, but the code is executed in Delphi. So this is not a query that can be run in a standard query tool, but it can be run as part of your application, and here is a way to validate the results of that query. The FD connection also receives an additional tab called DB Browser to browse the objects in your database. Tables and views populated from the metadata that is seen by FireDAC across the active connection. So here we can see the table sales info has 3 columns visible by FireDAC. So it's just another use of an inspector at runtime to discover information about what the active objects can actually reach, what they can actually read, and be able to execute statements at runtime. And the one thing I didn't tell you is actually this database that we are looking at is completely in memory. So there is no physical file on disk to open. So the only way we can look at an in-memory database is with a tool at runtime. And that is what Query Tool in Marshal is really designed to do. It's not meant to be a replacement for your desktop SQL tool. Write those complex statements in a rich editor. There's no syntax highlighting here. There's no standard features that you would expect in a query tool. I personally use SQLite Studio, but for when I need to see the objects at runtime in my app, this is my option. So I hope it's of use to you, and thank you for watching the demo.